after watching the 36 races from 2015, I can fully say that was the worst season I have watched thus far. And the numbers prove it. Everything proves that that was a terrible season. Everything about it was terrible. I mean, there wasn't much good. So let's start at the beginning of it, right? With the Daytona 500, which was maybe gonna be a foreshadowing of how the season was gonna go. It was almost like a symbol of how the season occurred throughout. At the beginning, it was kind of tame, there wasn't much happening. As we got throughout the race, then in that final run where they got 3 by 3 by 3 by 3, and they're all 3 wide, the whole pack is, it's really, really good racing. But overshadowing that is the fact that the race ended under yellow because of a last lap crash. Basically, what I'm saying is it had its hints of brilliance in that race, but it ended out terribly because of a race that ended under yellow. That almost is the epitome of 2015, the entire season. I go and I look at the Fox portion of the season, and it was good. It was not bad. The Fox portion was all right. Throughout the first, I think it was 10, 12 races, right? I just calculate that average because I want to see where it ranked among like 2012, 2013, 2014. Because 2012 was the lowest at the point with 68.2. 2013, 2014 were both just above 70. So I was wondering where 2015 ranked in there, and it ranked right with it. It was like 70.5 out of 100, which was right with 2013 and 2014. So I was like, well, maybe we're all just remembering 2015 wrong because of Talladega, the Talladega Gate, and the stuff that was happening in the chase, and then obviously the champion. Maybe though it's not that bad when we look at it deeper. But then we got to a stretch of races, Dover, Pocono, and Michigan, that absolutely ruined the average. And after that, the average never recovered and only got worse and worse and worse and worse until it was at points down near 63. It ended up towards 64, just a little bit less. But at points, it was down around 63.2 and 63.3 and 63.4. It was as low as that at some points. And really, the only reason it didn't stay that low was because of good races out of Talladega, Martinsville, and Texas in the chase, along with Homestead being a decent race. So 2015 started out pretty well. I mean, if you wanted to watch 2015, or if you wanted a race to watch from 2015, I would recommend one from the Fox side of broadcasting. Track like, Martinsville, which I ranked as the best race of the season. Bristol was alright. The super speedways that Fox, in fact, all the super speedways were alright. They were decent. Kind of similar to 2014. 2014's super speedways were consistently great. The Daytona 500 was the best race of 2014, in my opinion. The first Talladega race and the second Talladega race were both ranked above 90. The July race at Daytona was only ranked lower because it ended under weather conditions and had some moments where they weren't racing that well. But it was still, I think, considered a great race. If not, it was on the edge of being considered a great to good race. So the 2014 plate tracks were consistently good or great. The 2015 plate races, while not being great, were consistently good. They were. I think the highest one was an 86 and the lowest was an 83. That's a 3-point swing for the super speedways in 2015. So if you wanted, a solid super speedway package, 2015 was one, but 2014 tops it just because it was consistently great. 2015 was consistently good. 2014 super speedway package was consistently great. But I check some other things from the Fox side of broadcasting. As I mentioned, Bristol, Fontana was pretty good. The first Texas race is, in my opinion, one race that really stands out to me along with the first Kansas race. So these are races that many people may not remember, but especially Texas. I remember that final run, and watching that final run, it just keeps it confirmed to me. That is one of the best final runs to a race I have ever seen, that Texas race. It was crazy with drivers staying out, taking 2 tires, taking 4 tires, and people coming together on that strategy and being able to pass the people that stayed out and had the track position while you have some extra tires on the car. It was really, really fun to watch. Drivers use different lanes to get all over the place, and cars getting to the wall, and cars doing this and that and this. It was absolutely insane. That is something that really sticks in my mind. When I thought about 2015, that was actually the first thing I thought of when I started to watch 2015. I was like, right, I remember Texas and Kansas both had those crazy final restarts. And that's maybe some of my favorite moments from 2015 were those races right there, those 1.5 mile races with the late restarts. So, as we look at the rankings here, normally I'd be like, look at all these great races, right? Like look at the top of the board and see what's great. But with 2015, I'm more focused on look at the bad races at the bottom and look how terrible they were, right? So if I'm counting right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. 8 races were ranked as bad. They were below 50. They were ranked as bad. Indianapolis, second Loudon. Pocono 1, second Michigan, second Dover, second Richmond, first Michigan, and second Phoenix. 8 races ranked as bad. And then go down and you look even further. 5 were below 30, and 3 broke the old record for the worst race that I had ever watched. I had called that the 2013, what was it, Party in the Poconos 400. That's what I called the worst race I've ever watched. Well, it got topped 3 times. Richmond 2 got a 24 out of 100. If you don't remember, that Pocono race in 2013 got a 26 out of 100. So really, you look at this, Dover 2 matched that. Richmond 2 got a 24 of 100, Michigan 1 got a 23, and Phoenix 2 got a 22. Those races, those 4 races, either tied or lowered that bar for worst race I've ever watched, which is insane. There were 5 races below a 30 in 2015. Only 1 race broke into the 90s. Only 1 race broke into the 90s. That was Martinsville 1. And the same thing could be said for 2012. You may be saying, well, in 2012, only 1 race was ranked in the 90s, but that race also got a 98 out of 100. The highest race in 2015 was a 90 out of 100. 90. There were still 10 points to be gained in terms of how I felt about a race. It was bad. It was just bad. The top 2 spots are taken by short track, and it's the same one. The top 2 spots are taken by Martinsville, and then the next 3 are taken by super speedways. In fact, 4 of the next 5 are taken by super speedways after that. Right? The top 10. Short track, super speedway, super speedway, super speedway, Darlington, super speedway, short track, road course, Fontana. It's just, that describes 2015 so well that it wasn't really that great. It was just so bad. And I'm not even to the bad part of the season yet with the chase. But first, I want to talk about, as I've talked about many times, and it seems to always come down to this on this channel, this was the season where NASCAR tested packages. So the 2015 package was the first season to ever use tapered spacers on the engines. 750 horsepower. Before that, they were making 850 to 900 horsepower. It was max power. But then, for some reason, NASCAR said we can't do that and went down to 750 horsepower. So they did that, and the spoiler height got reduced from 8 down to 6 inches. So that was that package. Then you go and you look at Kentucky and Darlington. They ran a low downforce package. 750 horsepower still, but the splitter was smaller, and the spoiler was a lot smaller. It went from 6 inches down to, I believe it was 3.5 inches that they used for those races. Meanwhile, at Indianapolis and Michigan, they used a high drag. And they don't really call it a high downforce package because they still tried to decrease the downforce, but they tried to make it so that drafting meant more. It was technically called the high drag package, but also had to have added downforce. Even though drivers were getting really loose under each other, it had to have added some sort of downforce on the car. But maybe not because of how they placed the wicker, and I'll explain that. But so the at Indianapolis and Michigan, they used a high drag package, bigger splitter. I almost said spoiler, but there is a bigger spoiler. But bigger splitter. I wanted to focus on that first. And then the spoiler. So I read up on this because I was very interested because it looked very big. And I knew it was bigger than 2014. It's ranked at 9 inches tall. However, I didn't know if that included the wicker because they added a 1-inch wicker onto the top of the spoiler as well. So I was wondering, is it 9 inches plus the 1-inch wicker, or is it 8 inches plus the 1-inch wicker? I don't really know that, and there was nothing credible I could find that could say really how tall it was. But I know they added a 1-inch wicker onto the top of the spoiler to try and create more drag in the car. By doing that, I think with how they put it, they didn't put it straight up. Like what we see with the Super Speedway package now, we have a wicker on the top, and it's just to create more drag. We had that in the 2001 Super Speedway package. It created more drag. It's creating a bigger hole in the air for the drivers to draft up on each other. But that wicker wasn't placed straight up and down vertical. It was placed horizontal on the spoiler. So it was 1 inch up but also horizontal. Basically, I think that decrease the downforce on the car. The air going onto the car made it looser somehow. So that's kind of how that worked out and whatnot. But so basically, when you look at the races that were used with the special packages, Darlington with the low downforce package an 83 out of 100, Kentucky with the low downforce package a 77 out of 100, Indianapolis with the high drag package 49 out of 100, and Michigan 2 with the high downforce drag package at a 27 out of 100. So you just look at it. Even though I know Michigan and Indianapolis aren't good racetracks to judge that off of, Darlington's normally very good, but it was still, I think, the second best Darlington race that I've ranked so far. And Kentucky has been consistently the weakest link on the schedule for the past few seasons that I've watched. It has been in the bottom 5, and this time it's top 11. It's a top dozen race in 2015. If you wanted to watch a race in 2015, go watch Kentucky. That'd be one of the first I'd recommend to you because it was very, very fun, especially the battle between Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. So, for once, Kentucky got a good ranking, and that came right out of my mouth. Kentucky had a good race. There you go. It was in 2015 with a low downforce package. And before repave. Now you know. So with that out of the way, with the package truck out of the way, let's now focus on the completely stupid, idiotic Final 10 races chase that NASCAR has ever had. The worst Final 10 races that NASCAR has ever had. I will stand by that 110%. I also stand by that this was the worst season ever for NASCAR. So you look at the Final 10 races. Chicagoland, Loudon, and Dover were the first round. Kansas, Charlotte, Talladega the second round. And then you have Martinsville, Texas, Phoenix, and then Homestead ends it out, right? You go and you look at that. The highest ranked is Martinsville, an 87 out of 100. Talladega got an 86 out of 100. All right, so that's not too bad. But then as I'm scrolling through this list, the next highest is Homestead at a 73 out of 100. Then Chicagoland at a 71. Texas got a 69. Kansas got a 67. As I'm still looking down, Charlotte got a 56. God, it's so bad. Loudon got a 48. Dover got a 26. Phoenix got a 22. I believe that was all 10 races that I just named out right there that were in the chase. Otherwise, it was terrible. Like, literally, in other words, it was a terrible chase. So, let's start out with Chicagoland, right? The whole talk of the garage before Chicagoland were the restarts. The restarts in 2015, games were being played, especially by Matt Kenseth, especially at Michigan and Richmond. He liked to kind of slow down and then go. In the restart zone, he did that at the end of the Richmond race, which really hurt the drivers behind him, enabled him to pull away. He did the same things at Michigan during restarts. Basically, he would slow up and then go as that was happening because you, once again, can't beat the leader out of the restart zone. So you can't do that. So that was the whole talk about restarts. And basically it was don't beat the leader to the start-finish line unless he spins his tires. If he just doesn't go, you have the authority to beat him to the start-finish line. So then we got to Chicagoland. A restart around mid-race. Jeff Gordon is in second. Kyle Busch is leading. And Jeff Gordon literally leaves the restart zone before Kyle Busch. Literally leaves him and beats him to the line by a good distance and gets to the lead and keeps the lead. So NASCAR reviews the restart and says it was all good. There was no issue with that. And I'm like, what? How? Like, he literally left before him. He left before Kyle Busch, and he didn't get a penalty for it. It's insane to me that they thought that. It was horrendously stupid that NASCAR did not do that. Alright, so that happened. And then you go and you look at Loudon. It was a bad race altogether. You look at Loudon. Late in the race, a late race restart. Greg Biffle is leading, Brad Keselowski is second. Brad beats Biffle to the start-finish line. However, right, he beats him to the start-finish line, but doesn't lead off of turn number 2. Biffle gets it back. Brad gives it back. So Brad is in second now, right where he restarted. Biffle's leading where he restarted. A few laps down the line, NASCAR black flags the 2-car for, quote, jumping the restart. How now can you jump the restart if you were second and you stayed second? It doesn't make any sense. You didn't penalize Jeff Gordon for jumping the restart blatantly at Chicagoland, and now this guy gives the spot back and you're going to black flag him for jumping the restart? What is wrong with NASCAR in the chase in 2015? It was stupid. It didn't make any sense. So after that bad race is over and Kevin Harvick ran out of fuel after a crash at Chicagoland, he has to win Dover, which he does, which was a terrible race. It had nothing. Kevin Harvick led, I think, 355 of 400 laps. It was absolutely terrible. So now we've had two controversial calls in the first two chase races, and then a terrible chase race, which knocked Jimmy Johnson out instead of drivers that should have been knocked out, like Ryan Newman or someone. Jimmy Johnson got knocked out. One of the top 5, top 7 drivers of the season just got knocked out because of a mechanical issue. And drivers like Kyle Busch and Dale Jr. and Kevin Harvick had to finish 1, 2, 3 in order to advance. That's how bad the chase format is. But let's now go to Kansas. Nothing controversial happened there for sure. Nothing at all. Except for the fact that Joey Logano spun Matt Kenseth in a just hard race for the lead. Kenseth spun, and we know how that ended. But so Logano wins, goes on to the next round. Then Charlotte. Oh, boy, Charlotte. So Justin Allgaier blew up. NASCAR lays down track dry, speedy dry, and then doesn't clean it all up. They don't clean all the oil up. So drivers go to the highest on the restart, most notably Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's in the chase, and Jr. hits the wall because of the oil. Other drivers do it, like Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski and Sam Hornish Jr. NASCAR then calls yellow because there might possibly be fluid on the racetrack. Yeah, as if three of the most talented drivers in NASCAR at that time just decided to hit the wall. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Brad Keselowski, and Kyle Busch all decided to just hit the wall for no reason. Of course, there was no oil on the racetrack. And then Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson hit on pit road as Larson tried to leave pit road. Larson tried to fake in and then out. Kyle Busch tried to fake out and then in, and they hit, and all that happened. It was bad, right? So that happens, and after the race, Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch are the most vocal about there being oil on the racetrack. Dale Jr. went as far to say, I know what I hit. I know it was there. It was oil on the racetrack. Because NASCAR was like, there was no oil. It was fine. And Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch were like, bullshit. We know what we hit. We're out here in the race cars. You're up there sitting in the tower. Come out on the track if you want to know, right? And then that all boils up to Talladega, which is the dagger in this chase. It was a great race. They didn't wreck at all until the final restart. It was perfect. The only 2 yellows were for blown engines. It was absolutely incredible. You saw, controversy, well, not controversy, but you saw drama. Dale Earnhardt Jr. trying to win. He's leading. He's at one of his best tracks, if not his best track. And then he has a pit road penalty. He's about to go lap down. Fortunately for him, Justin Allgaier blows up. So then on the restart, drives his way through the field, back up to the front, but then locks up his tires for the final pit stop. Has to take 2 tires while others take fuel only. He falls back in the pack. It's now a single file line at the top. Dale Jr. pretty much on his own breaks up that top side, running what I call his best plate track performance ever. Gets up to third when the yellow comes out. Greg Biffle has to pit, and now with their quote 1 attempt at a green-white checker, because God forbid they have 3 of them at a super speedway because Austin Dillon got launched into the fence on a non-green-white checker attempt. So the attempt, Kevin Harvick cannot go. He's literally saying on his radio, "This is as fast as I can go. It's 70 miles an hour." At a track where they go 200 miles an hour, he pulls out of the way on the first restart. Jimmy Johnson and Kyle Larson spin to the inside because Joey Logano brake checked in the restart zone. NASCAR throws the yellow, which would then end the race, but then NASCAR says it's not an attempt because they didn't get to the start-finish line. They could have kept it green. Now NASCAR is in controversy because they said there's only 1 attempt, but now they're giving them another attempt because they threw the yellow before the start-finish line. They're making up rules as they go. People are saying they're trying to give it to Dale Jr. on the ensuing restart. Joey Logano and Dale Jr. take off. They're getting pushes from Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski. Meanwhile, further back in the pack, Kevin Harvick gets his position back, even though he lost about 8 of them before the first attempt. He gets his spot back for some reason, I guess because it wasn't an attempt, but then Jimmy Johnson and Kyle Larson also should have gotten their spots back, but they didn't because NASCAR, and they gave Harvick's back for whatever reason. Then Harvick stays in the pack, turns right into Trevor Bayne on purpose to cause an accident, causes that big crash, which then causes NASCAR to throw the yellow after they took the green flag, which then in turn ends the race after 100 feet of green flag racing. Dale Earnhardt Jr. loses to Joey Logano by a splitter, if he had maybe 5 more seconds of green flag racing, which in turn then leads to more controversy because Dale Jr. is the most popular driver, got eliminated due to a guy that blew up and didn't move out of the way. Meanwhile, the broadcasters say we don't know what could have happened there. I mean, he probably just didn't know he was out there. It was just a huge mistake out of Kevin Harvick. And all the while, the driver who caused that crash is not talking to media at all. He's hiding in his motorhome, has declined comment, even though he advanced in the next round. So why would you decline comment? And if it was a mistake, why not just go out and say it was a mistake? Obviously, every sign points to it was on purpose, but NASCAR doesn't want to ruin their precious little chase format, so they don't do anything to Kevin Harvick, because then that would show that the format sucks and can be exploited by teams to do stuff like that. So they end up not penalizing Harvick. He moves on to the next round, even after causing millions of dollars of damage in cars, but who cares about that? Putting people's lives at risk. And then next race at Martinsville, Matt Kenseth wrecks Joe Logano on purpose while he's multiple laps down. From the race lead, may I add, NASCAR parks Matt Kenseth for the next 2 races due to that. At Texas, Goodyear just blew tires all the time. Joe Logano, Kevin Harvick, Dale Jr., and others. Kyle Larson just had all these tire issues and kept blowing them throughout the race. Kevin Harvick had, quote, bad luck during the race and bad luck at Talladega, according to the NBC booth, even though at Talladega it wasn't bad luck. It was just his fault. He caused the crash. He did what he needed to do. It wasn't bad luck. At Texas, maybe it was payback for what happened there. Jimmy Johnson passes Brad Keselowski late to win, but there's still controversy from the tire issues, and Brad dominated the race. And then we move on to Phoenix. There's more controversy because races should not end under yellow if it means determining the next round of the chase. But those drivers also didn't complain at Talladega. I'm looking at you, Carl Edwards. You didn't complain that race ended under yellow because you made it. But at Phoenix, it's all of a sudden a bad thing that races end under yellow to determine the next round of the championship. Kind of strange how that works when you're in your certain situations. Dale Jr. gets the benefit of the win because of the rain. Fans call it rigged, tried to, quote, make it up for Talladega. However, making it up for Talladega would have been giving him the win at Talladega by waiting to throw the yellow, because he was obviously going to get past Joe Logano in the next 500 feet because he was noticeably moving up closer to Logano and passing him. So now there's a whole controversy there because it ended under rain. It was the worst race of the season. No one could pass. Harvick was out front for forever. Dale Jr. gets a huge lucky break, and then at Homestead, Denny Hamlin blows up. They don't throw yellow for oil. Some cars get into the wall. They finally throw a yellow. They don't do anything to the top side, which is fine. It doesn't impact the race. But then they throw a debris yellow with under 10 to go for questionable debris. Kyle Larson gets a win stealing from him, or Brad Keselowski gives it to Kyle Busch, and the man who missed a third of the season wins the championship. That is all you need to know about 2015. That chase sums up the clusterfuck that 2015 was for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. So it may have sounded like a rant there at the end, but really that's just how I kind of felt about it. It was all just kind of rushing through at the end with the chase. It was like, oh my god, all this stuff is happening, and it's so stupid. Literally, NASCAR is in the middle of controversy like every chase race, which was pretty stupid. It was dumb. Hopefully, 2016 is better. In my opinion, I've always ranked it 2016 as my 4th best season that I've ever watched. We'll see if it holds up to that. We'll see. It should be better than 2015. I don't think anything's gonna be worse than 2015, but we'll just find out. So that's it. Went a little long because of trying to describe all of the things that happened in the chase. There's just so much bad that happened there. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you guys for the next one.